listeners, and welcome to another episode of Current Events on Tap, a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project, where, like the drinks, the current events are on the house. And I'm your host, Alex Kirsch, pragmatic, progressive, U.S. Army veteran, truck driver, gamer, and streamer. If this is your first time on the show, please do not forget to hit like, share, and comment, and subscribe. I am currently streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, and the X platform. The format of the show is very simple. I bring one or more guests onto the show, we talk beer or beverage of choice, and current events of the week. Each person will discuss their beverage of choice for this hour, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. It seriously does not matter. Then each person is going to cover two current events of their choosing. They give the current event, they give their assessment, then each person gets a chance to give their assessment, then we discuss it. Now, debate may be possible, but rest assured, you are in a good faith zone. You will get your chance to get your point across. The point of this space is for all of us to discuss the issue, what we think of it, and keep an open mind to what the other person has to say. And please remember to keep it within TOS. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest this evening, Rashad Crenshaw. How you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. So, let's go ahead and give a little bit of background about yourself real quick.
I'm a young Gen Z liberal YouTuber. I started out a little bit more right-wing. I don't want to say I was conservative, but I was a little bit more Trumpy, a little bit more on the Trump side of things. And then around 2023, I was like, I don't know if I began to get a little bit more into like the science of politics, more so than like the culture war stuff. And then I was like, well, now that I'm taking this more seriously, it's kind of hard to be on the Trump end of things. So I turn a little bit more left, and I'm doing that now.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I initially seen you like on Wix on his panels. You're like on his panels all the time, and I feel like you're always giving like really good takes. You and I actually were on a panel talking about lobbying and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were.
Yep, that was actually a really fun panel. So what got you into streaming essentially? Like, why did you want to get into it?
I got into it. It's kind of so. I was in college, like 2020 is my first year of college. And I was not really liking it. It was whatever. Like I was there. It was like my first semester, and I was kind of just chilling. And a friend of mine hit me up from high school, and he was like, "Hey, like, do you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like something I'd be interested in doing." So, at that time, I was not really doing the best with the grades, but I was taking an interest in the podcasting thing, and I thought about doing YouTube years before, like when I was in high school, like 2016. But I was like, I don't know if I don't know if I'll be able to make it work. So time went on, and then it just kind of just happened on its own. So
sure, absolutely, yeah. I kind of like I was still active duty when I kind of got into it. And was like one of my buddies actually got me into it because him and I met because he's also a veteran as well, and he reached out to me because him and I would like talk on Facebook consistently, and then he did his own show like every Saturday and whatnot. And I used to be a caller, then I became a contributor, then I pretty much became a regular and whatnot, and then I kind of got into it. I used to do the podcast from my phone essentially. Eventually I kind of got into when I actually got an actual setup, the setup I have right now. That's when I actually legitimately got into a lot more heavy duty podcasting. I had to take a hiatus though, because when I got into trucking, I didn't have time to do it because I used to do OTR work. And then after OTR, I went regional, and I still didn't really have a whole lot of time. I tried, but it's so hard to stay consistent regarding that. But now that I work in a job where I'm home every single day, it's easier for me to do so as well. So, but yeah, I mean, it's fun. I mean, there are people out there that are probably better content creators than me, and that's fine. I do this because I enjoy doing this. I'm not doing this for the cloud or to be famous. I do it because I like having conversations with other people that I can have conversations with. Because I used to do this show by myself. And I realized I'm boring as shit. I've got the charisma of a celery. I mean, it's true. Like, so I like.
I don't know about that.
Well, it's just like I feel like bringing other people on makes things more interesting. It's not just me talking for an hour, So
yeah.
So anyway, thanks so much for giving a little bit of background, a little bit of context for yourself, and I'm definitely checking out some more of your content. I checked out the one where it was where a certain content creator got decked. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that I don't know what that was. Just like a piece of like bird that flew in my face. My bad.
It's okay.
Yeah, that was a funny clip right there. I mean, yeah, the mainstream, I'll say mainstream, the bigger names in the game are always up to some interesting stuff.
Yeah,
So
definitely. But yeah, I'll definitely be checking out more of your content in the future. So anyway, do you have a beverage of choice this evening, or are you just sticking to water? It doesn't really matter.
yeah, I just drink water. I don't really drink alcohol. So like
Okay.
So yeah, I'd say water's my thing. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm rocking with now.
Hey, that's there. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, there are some people that don't drink alcohol. Period. I respect that 100%. Me, I love talking beer and I love talking politics. So that's just how I am.
I respect that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But tonight I'm drinking a maple lager from Upper Hand Brewery. It's a local brewery here in Michigan. I believe it's in the Upper Peninsula, called Sugar Bush. It's apparently like a maple lager. It's kind of got a little bit of sweetness to it. I mean, it's okay. It's not the greatest in the entire world, but this is a very good brewery. If people want to try that out, I highly recommend it. They got a great selection though. So, but yeah, you know, water, you got to stay hydrated, because I can always tell you,
Yeah.
I can speak from experience. If you do not properly hydrate and you get shit faced, you're going to have a hangover in the morning. So it's always better to hydrate. I highly suggest hydrating before you getting drunk. So,
Yeah.
all right. So shall we go ahead and just jump right into the topics then?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So the first topic is, last week the House of Representatives passed a portion of the National Defense Authorization Act, also known as NDAA, which will allow the U.S. government to automatically register men 18 to 25 years of age into selective service, known as the draft system. Now, normally young men of this age go into the website and they register themselves. I had to do it myself. Failure to do so is a felony. Now, while there hasn't really been a need for a draft since Vietnam, this has been in place like for well over a century, like people like getting drafted and whatnot. Now, however, the Senate Armed Forces Committee has also created a version which this eligibility will also be extended to women. Now, for the record, as of 2022, there are 17.5% of active duty military women. Now, according to the DoD, Department of Defense, that's about 229,000 members. That's an approximate number. Now, in the last decade, we have seen women go into schools in the military that they never would have been able to go to before. For example, the U.S. Army Ranger School, which is located at Fort Moore, formerly known as Fort Benning, Georgia. And it first allowed females to actually attend the premier leadership school in the U.S. military, not the Army, the premier leadership school in the military, where Captain Kristen Geist and First Lieutenant Haver were the first female soldiers to graduate in 2015. Now, females have also been able to go to the sniper school located at Fort Moore, Georgia. Now, I have served with people who were cadre for both of these schools when females attended these insanely difficult schools. Now, while both were very heavily scrutinized and micromanaged, females have proven to be capable of earning their place among the many who came before them, including men. Now, granted, some standards are lowered just because, like, let's just be honest, men and women are different physiologically. Our biology is completely different. Some women can't carry as much as men can. That's just the way things are. I get that, right? But there are still some men that can't pass the standards, and some of these women have been able to. Now, there are people on both the left and the right who have a huge problem with the concept of women being eligible for the draft. People like Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, said, "We're talking about involuntarily drafting women. I'm totally opposed to that. I'm also worried about the expansion of the draft." Now, people on the left are also losing their minds, thinking that women shouldn't be forced to serve in the U.S. military. Saying this is taking away women's rights to choose whether they want to serve or not. Now, I look at it like this. Everyone who is healthy and capable of serving should enroll in the selective service, or I think they should just get rid of it in general. I personally prefer getting rid of the draft in general, simply because in a draft, the people that are most directly going to be affected by this is not the wealthy or the people who are, their parents are senators, congresspeople, whatnot. It's the lower and middle income class people that are mostly affected by all this. They're the ones that are going to have to serve, especially on the front lines. Now, some people are going to sign up for the reserves just to avoid being drafted into frontline combat. People like former National Security Advisor Donald Trump, John Bolton. He actually openly said, "I joined the reserves, so I didn't go into frontline combat." He just basically stayed stateside. Now, I believe that the concept of the draft is outdated completely, and I would rather have people who want to serve than those who are forced to. So, Rashaad, why don't you go give me your ideas on this?
First question I have is Fort Benning, did they change the name of Fort Benning?
They did. It is now.
I mean, I don't have a problem, but like that's just I didn't think I've been to Fort Benning for basic training, and I just can't imagine it not being Fort Benning. But
Yep.
wow, that's interesting. Okay, I think I don't think the draft is a problem because there's so many other roles you can serve in the military besides infantry.
Sure.
Or besides, I know I think we still have tanks in the army. I think the Marines got rid of tanks. There's so many other non-combat roles you can serve in. I mean, supply is really important. Logistics is important. There's office jobs in the army. Like there's so much non-combat stuff that needs to get done that it could be possible that in times of war, those jobs are going to need an expansion in personnel.
Mm-hmm.
And if women can fit those roles, whether it's, I don't know what people do behind the desk in the army, but I'm sure there's a lot of paperwork that has to get done. Given how long you have to wait around for stuff when you're in the army, I would imagine there's a lot of waiting around. So yeah, there has to be a lot of paperwork. Somebody's got to do it. I mean, I can't imagine that there'd be less paperwork during times of war. So I gotta say, yeah. I mean, I don't remember ever signing up for the selective service. It might be because when I joined at like 17 to the Army National Guard, so they probably didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, women don't have to. I don't want women serving in the infantry. I don't want women serving in a combat role. But there's jobs they can do. And of course, not all men have to serve in a combat role, but we do need to be prepared for the possibility of having to do that.
Okay. Now, just kind of give a little bit of clarification. Yeah, they did change the name of Fort Benning. It was the last year, the year before last. It's now Fort Moore, named after Hal Moore. You remember from the movie We Were Soldiers?
No.
Okay.
No.
It basically takes place in the Ayadrang Valley, where the 7th Cavalry Division landed into the Ayadrang Valley, and Colonel Hal Moore was in charge of the 7th Cavalry, and they basically held off like 4,000 North Vietnamese troops for like a couple days. It's a pretty good story, but they named the base after him because he's such a prolific leader. But anyway, yeah, that was just kind of give a little bit of context into it. But again, like when I look at the draft, right? Yes, it's true. Not everybody is going to serve like in the front lines. This is 100% accurate. But I kind of go back to the concept of like, people always talk about how everybody needs to be treated equally within society, right? You've got people out there saying that, oh, well, women need to be treated equally in society. I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. But that's why I'm saying is like, if men can be eligible for the draft, then so should women, honestly. I'm a firm believer in that. Just because, like, I believe that if women want to be treated equally in society and not be, like, looked at as cupcakes that need to be protected, then, yeah. Because even though I do believe, and again, I would much rather have people that want to serve instead of people that were forced to, because I'm sure that you experience it. You experience people that just did not want to fucking be there, that just like were absolute, or like
they signed up to be there, and yet you had some guys that were like, they showed up and they were like, actually, don't really want to be here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just when it comes down to combat roles, I understand why some people might be a little hesitant, but I went by this principle: if you can hack it, you should be able to be there, right? I always said this, like, if you try to use your gender as a reason why you can't do something, I'm not gonna fucking hear it, okay? I'm not gonna accept that. You signed up for this, and you gotta push forward, and you gotta do your part. I mean, like I've had female soldiers that served in because I was an artilleryman that served in artillery units, and some of them were just as capable of serving. There was a LT that we had; she was a platoon leader. She was out there slugging it like the rest of us, but she always had the time to talk about like, well, I wanted to be in the medical field, not in combat. So she always never let us forget that. But she was always out there slugging it like the rest of us, getting dirty like the rest of us. I've seen some females that are capable, and I've seen some guys that couldn't handle it. I mean, and I can see why some people might feel like women don't belong in combat. But the thing is, though, it's just like, well, where do we draw the line then? Because like we've got women that serve as police officers, we got women in the Yazidi women that were fighting against ISIS. They were on the front lines just like everybody else, and they proved that they can slug it out just like anybody else. So that's just my point of view on that.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about the Yazidi women and the Kurdish women. They did fight ISIS. But our military, we function at a higher level. Mm-hmm. Like the physical standards for both combat and just PT itself.
Yeah.
For infantry are probably a lot more stringent than the PKK. Like they're fighting, but their training standards and expectations are, I never served. Like I snapped my ankle in half in training, so I got med boarded. So I'm not even gonna act like I ever served. But I've watched plenty of combat footage. Think of like McGregor when that's my ankle. It was the exact same like graphic look.
Oh, Conor McGregor. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's roles women could serve in. That are combat roles, like artillerymen, like that's definitely a role a woman could serve in that's combat oriented, where she doesn't necessarily have to like engage in like the utmost amount of physical exertion. Of course, I'm sure there's still going to be ruck marches for PT, and there's still going to be maybe even some physically stringent stuff that happens in combat. But I think where it comes from is a lot of people don't know that there are roles women can serve in under a draft that doesn't involve combat. Because there's a lot of guys who are going to get drafted who won't serve in combat either. So I think a lot of people are just freaking out because it's like they think, oh my God, they're going to all send us on the front lines to fight, Putin's boys or whatever. When in reality, you're probably going to get, sent to some safe base where your job is probably to manage supply or to do, logistics or to, do paperwork, which is important work. Yeah, like this is not stuff that we could just like ignore. Like the infantry, the front lines don't function without proper supplies and logistics and proper, documentation of who's where, who's got what, who's doing what. So, I think we need it. And I think a lot of people would agree if they knew that women weren't going to go to the front lines. And I don't know, like I've argued with people about this before, about women being capable of doing the frontline stuff. But like, we as America, we put so much equipment on our troops. Like I used to watch so much combat footage back in the day when I was like younger. And we would like, I've seen guys with like radio, fucking big ass pack right here, big ass pack there, big, like, I'm like, how the fuck is this guy even keeping up with the rest of his unit? I don't know if it's realistic to expect the woman to be able to go from building to building to building to building, all this weight, all that heat, all that constant movement. But then again, like you said, you have the Yazidi women, you have the Kurdish women. So I don't know, but I do think our nation's not necessarily ready to send our women to the front lines. And I don't think it's necessary yet. But I think if a woman knows she's capable and she can show that she's not a burden to her unit, I mean, I'm not going to get in the way of someone who's capable. But I think people just are ignorant to the fact that women don't have to go to the front lines, and they more than likely won't,
Yep. A lot of people seem to think like, infantry is always going to see combat. Not always the case. I mean, that's very true. And so like, I've seen some female soldiers that are just as capable of rucking that stuff, because I used to be a cadre at down at Fort Moore. It was called the Military Advisor Training Academy, and we would actually train people to become military advisors. And in one of the scenarios, they were taught how to do a mass cal. Mass cal is basically like a situation where you've got mass casualties everywhere. People are just taking fire, and you got to evacuate these people. You got to evacuate these casualties, right? And I saw one female soldier. She grabbed a guy that was like, this guy must have been at least 200 pounds, and she just picked him up and just drug him away from that situation, which is exactly what you could do in that situation. Now, some people say, oh, well, she's the exception to the rule. She was like 5'2" and maybe like $130 or something like that. And she was rucking this guy. It's all about the training, and it's all about the attitude and the adrenaline that's going through your body, honestly. Now, granted, not everyone's going to be able to do that. I'm just being a realist about that. But some people, you'd be surprised what you're capable of doing when your adrenaline is just pumping. You can just get it out there. But like, but you're 100%.
And when everyone around you, when everyone around you expects you to properly get the job done, you'll really get it done then too.
Absolutely. But I've seen a lot of people make excuses as to why they don't want to see this. I think they're looking at it from the wrong point of view. And because like thing is like when did you go in for basic training? Like when did you go in?
That was like 2019, so that was before the 6 month. They made that 6 month change where it was like from 3 months to 6 months. So I went in right before. Still got unlucky and snapped my ankle, but about 2019.
Okay, so like around 2019, they probably, I don't know if they already started implementing it, because I can't remember this far back, but like they started training.
I think it was around that time.
But it was like the new PT test, the ACFT and stuff like that. They were training up for stuff like that. That's now broken down into 3 different categories. Like if you're an admin, you're these are your standards. If you're an MP, these are your standards. If you're an infantry or artillery, these are your standards. Everyone's got different standards across the board. Like, for example, an artilleryman's going to have to be able to, like, lift and, like, run and throw much more than a person that does admin, which makes sense. I'd say that makes perfect sense. So the standards are significantly different. Now, I never actually had to take one because I was on profile myself, actually. I have 3 bulging discs in my lower back, and in the last couple of years of my career, I pretty much wasn't doing a lot of the extensive stuff. But, you know, like, when I look at this, right, when I look at, like, whether people should be eligible, yeah, I say they should, you know, if I'm just going to be consistent across the board. Because I have seen female soldiers serve just as honorably as the men can. I don't believe it when people say, oh, women don't make good leaders. I've seen some phenomenal female leaders. Like, they are just as good and just as competent as some men. You know, some might have a chip on their shoulder. I get it. You know, there's some out there. But the thing is, like, I've seen male soldiers have chip on their shoulders as well. Like, they feel like you had this one guy, he was enlisted at one point and he got picked on a lot, so he went green to gold and then became an officer. Now he's, like, taking it out on everybody else, kind of deal, like that chip on your shoulder. Like, I see that all the time. But again, when I focus upon an issue like this, people are looking at this, I feel, from the wrong angle. Like, they're saying, no, women should not be eligible for the draft. Why not? I still have yet to hear good reasons to why they can't be eligible for the draft. I feel like you're just telling women what they should not be able to do. Like, you hear guys say, oh, women should not be in political position. Women should not be police. What can women do exactly? What exactly do you expect? Not you exactly, but these guys that believe that women shouldn't serve. You kind of see where I'm coming from here?
Yeah, I think most people just hear draft and they think like fighting in the jungle in Vietnam. Like, they don't think of like any other job you could possibly be doing.
Yeah.
And it's just the average American is uninformed about civics, about the military, how many jobs there are. Like, the average person just doesn't know. And I think it's just public not ignorance in the sense of like they're dumb, but ignorance in the sense of they've got other stuff they're worried about. So they don't think for 1 second like, oh, these women could be doing a different job besides infantry. And, of course, there are some women who could do the job, but, generally speaking, you're more effective. Like, you're most like, it's really hard to find a woman who can properly do the job up to the standard we need. And that's okay. Like, it's okay that most women can't make the cut. And if some can, that's fine. It's up to the unit. I think it should be up to the unit themselves that they want to accept that person in. Because at the end of the day, you have to account for the fact there's a whole bunch of guys who are bound to be physically more capable than her, who have to rely on her. So you got to, make sure that unit actually feels comfortable with that woman being there. But I think people don't realize women can serve in other capacities, and those capacities are so important because without them, you can put as many tough guys in the infantry as you want. What the fuck? What are they going to eat? Mm-hmm. How are you going to know where they are? What are they going to fucking shoot? What weapons are they going to fucking use? Your rifle's probably got your rifle probably got cleaned by a woman. Your ammo probably got counted by a woman. Like, all of this, like, like. It's just, I think a lot of people don't realize women can serve in a functional capacity. But I think you do have those sexist men that are like, oh, a woman could never do this effectively or do that effectively. And that's just plain old sexism. It is interesting to hear you say that there's now like standards for different MOSs. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Yep. I
think there shouldn't be, because I think like I've heard of scenarios where like people have been swapped out of like random jobs and all right, here's your rifle. You're going to fucking, they told us that all the time. Like, if you switch your fucking MOS, don't think you're safe because there could come a day where they just put a rifle in your hand and fucking send you out. So,
oh yeah,
that's just a little, side opinion I had.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, like there was one time when I was in Baghdad in 2008 and we had a guy, he was the chaplain's assistant. He wanted to go on patrol with us. He had never really gone on patrol with anybody before, and this guy, you could tell he had no training whatsoever, because we were just going to go out and check out a traffic control point for some Iraqi army guys that were managing this control point. We pull out on the highway. This dude jumps out in the middle of the freaking highway and just like starts pulling security. Like, dude, what are you doing? Pulling security is like, no, get up, dude, get up. Stop what you're doing.
Right.
You're that's not necessary, okay? I mean, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but that's not how this works. But and I think and you still have to go through the same like standards. It's just you don't have to lift nearly as much because you're not expected to, which it does make sense. But like for example, like you have some units that are like mechanized, right? They may have different standards as far as like ruck marches go. But if you're like at Fort Campbell, you're going to be rucking all the time. Like in order to go to Fort Campbell, be stationed at Fort Campbell, you got to go to air assault school. Like that's a requirement. Even if you're a cook, even if you're like, you got to go to air assault school. Not everybody has to go through that, which is why like it can vary based upon your duty stage. But you're 100% correct that like, if you go to a unit, right, male, female, what have you, and you're expected to perform a job, if you're not able to do so, you become a liability to that unit. Regardless of your gender, essentially. You become a liability, and it actually has a drastic effect. Now, people don't understand like how in-depth it really gets. Like when it comes down to unit readiness, there's like things called like health of the force meetings, right? You actually basically have to talk to your battalion, squadron, task force commander, whatnot, about the health and wellness of all your troops, essentially. And if, like, say, for example, Private Joe Snuffy over here or Private Jill Snuffy over here is non-deployable, he's going to wonder, why? What's going on with this soldier kind of deal? And you have to, like, this person, and that's why it's so important for people to have an understanding of, like, what your soldiers are capable of. And, it's just, if you have a female soldier that's in a combat unit and, she's just taking up a slot, she doesn't come to work on time, stuff like that, she's basically putting a detriment to the unit. Same thing with the male, essentially. I mean, I'm an equal opportunist. I look at it all the same way. I'm a very pragmatic person.
Yeah, I think it's just public ignorance because people really don't know that there's other shit that goes on besides shooting at people. They just don't know. They really think that if you get drafted, it's just your auto just, all right, time to die, like, or time to kill somebody or whatever the case might be. And they just don't realize that, I can't think of a president actually being like, yeah, I'm sending all of your daughters to the front line. Like that would be the end of his presidency. Like we would actually see a president get drugged physically out of the White House. Like it'd be worse than the Civil War. Like it would be immediate ejection from leadership of the country. Like I don't think a president would be crazy enough to do that. Between Trump, Biden, RFK, like none of these guys I think would be crazy enough to do it. But yeah, I mean, people who are like squirming about the draft, yeah, they gotta realize and understand, like there will come a time where people are gonna get called up. We all sign up for it. There's gonna be times where women are gonna be needed for jobs other than combat. But I really do think the freaking out is because people don't know that there's other jobs besides combat. And then you do have your group that's like, I don't want to serve my country. People that are like, I shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I'm above that. I pay my taxes. The end.
Yeah.
You have that camp, just people just losing their mind about some stuff that just has to be done. But it looks good on paper as a politician to be like, I reject the idea of women being drafted. But it's like, okay, now when we actually go to war and we need all this stuff to get done behind the scenes, behind front lines, and it's not getting done because we have a shortage of personnel, explain yourself then. But yeah, it's just misinformation.
It really is. And what people don't realize is like some of the most hit units, like the most attacked units that in theater, whether the Afghanistan theater or the Iraq theater, wasn't infantry units or spec ops units. It was transportation units. Why? You said it. Logistics.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, look what Ukraine's been doing to Russia's logistics. They're rocking the shit out of them. Like you see convoys miles long, artillery shells, food, fuel. They're getting rocketed, and that's exactly how you win it, because a unit that can't function without its logistics is useless. Like, that's just, like, our enemy know it, and Ukraine knows it too.
Yeah, no food, no fuel, no ammo. You're just sitting there. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, you're flapping.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
That's logistics are so important, and that's really what I think the female draft is going to be. It's just, logistics and what do they call it, pogue or whatever, yeah, and that's important. That stuff is really important. You got to have those people. So
I'm a realist, like that's why, like people that granted, everybody regardless of their MOS, they'll always give that person, oh, you're an admin clerk, yeah, poke, but guess what? If you need something done, you got to go to that admin clerk. I mean, they get as long as they're competent, get the job done. You need those people. I mean, how else are you going to get, your leave approved? How else are you going to get your pay updated? How else are you going to get your promotions done? I mean, everything clicks. Everything works, okay? If something's out of order, the whole unit is thrown out of focus. So, yeah.
True. Yeah. Very true.
All right. I think we've pretty much nailed this topic. How about you? Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. So go ahead and start with your first topic.
So Leah Thomas was obviously banned from the Olympics. I believe so. I believe she was the world governing body for women's swimming basically barred her from being able to compete. Which, it does beg the question as to why it took so long for the world to kind of just realize and recognize and understand that there are... It begs the question, like, how willing are we? Because I know people say, oh, it's rare that this stuff happens, and, it's so uncommon for a transgender athlete to participate in women's spaces. But when it does happen, you have a litany of women whose ability to be the number one ranked athlete in their sport just be destroyed, and that has to be crushing, for an athlete, for the parents to watch your kid train, their whole life and then compete against someone who has, hormonal differences, that can no longer be changed, broad shoulders, longer arms, things that, come about from puberty, that can't be undone. And you kind of have to deal with that. So it's interesting that it took this long, and it took the world, governing body of women's swimming, World Aquatics, to be like, hey, like, no, like, if you've been through male puberty, you cannot compete. So my biggest issue is, the thing is, like, about the male puberty thing is, like, I don't want kids going through hormonal therapy before they actually know whether or not they actually want to be a fully transitioned into a person who's fully transitioned to their actual gender, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, people don't, it's almost like women, if you're trans, you can't compete. But the price for her being able to compete for so long was just lit. It's just a whole bunch of women being unable to reach their goals. So I thought that they made the right call there. It's unfortunate though, because she can't compete, and that sucks in and of itself. Yep.
So basically, like, what you're just saying is, like, you understand, like, the concern that some people might have, because there's even women in the WNBA right now that actually share that concern that you have. Yeah, I mean, I get it. This to me is a very complex issue because I don't have to worry about this thing. For starters, I'm not athletic whatsoever, so. But the thing is like, I understand, like, how some people might feel conflicted. They might feel like this is something that, I trained my entire life, and then somebody that just, and the thing is, like, the whole issue is, like, you can't just, like I can't just wake up tomorrow and say, oh, I'm a woman, and then go try out for the WNBA, because first off, I'd still get skull drug, because, like, again, I'm not an athlete. I know there's a process to it, but I do feel, and, like, before I kind of go in, do you think that, like, Leah Thomas was being malicious or something like that with this whole competing with women? Do you think there was, like, a ill intent behind it?
I don't think so, because I believe she was doing it her whole life. Like, she was a swimmer her whole life before she transitioned.
Sure.
And it's hard to imagine someone transitioning to their I want to use the language properly here, preferred, transitioning to the gender that they identify with.
Yes.
And then being told your career's over. That's kind of hard. Like, that's not, like, who wants to, okay, finally I've done what I've needed to do to feel comfortable within my own skin. And now what I've been doing my whole life, all right, you're done now. Who wants to hear that? Mm-hmm. It's not it's definitely not normal to just expect someone to be like, all right guys, bye. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not normal.
Yeah.
So I think some people might think like, oh, she was doing it because she knew she had an unfair advantage. I think it was a simple fact that, you know, you've been swimming your whole life and you want to continue swimming, but you know, I guess the argument they might be making is, oh, it's malicious because she didn't, you know, keep competing with men. She went to go compete with women. I don't know the answer to that entirely. I don't even know if Leah, what was she ranked, like 400 something in the world?
I can't remember.
Or in the country. I believe she was ranked in the 400s in the country, I believe. Not the world, for swimming amongst men. And then when she fully transitioned, she became the number one swimmer. So it's, you know, I could see why some people might say it's malicious, but I can understand why she wasn't just ready to just wrap things up just because she transitioned.
Okay.
What do you think?
No, again, it's easy for me to like kind of have an opinion about this because, for starters, I don't have to worry about something like this, you know? I don't think that, you know, I used to think that, like, was Leah Thomas, like, trying to look for something? It's like, well, I can't compete with men. I don't know if that's the case, and I'm not going to say one way or the other. I just think that, like, there are some swimmers that felt like they trained their entire lives as well, and then they just kind of lost all of that. There are some that have gone out there that have actually, like, you know, Riley Gaines is one of them. She's gone out and basically said, yeah, this is horrible because I trained my entire life, and she's become a huge critic of this situation. Now, Riley Gaines, from what I understand, isn't, like, against the trans community, just, like, against the concept of trans people competing in their sports. Now, this is such a really complicated subject. Now, there are those out there who's like, well, do you think that people, like trans people, should still be able to compete? I'd say if they meet the requirements in accordance with the NCAA or the Professional Sports League, sure. I've actually seen a trans man compete against other men in boxing, and that dude rocked the fuck out of another dude. Like, I was like, holy shit. Now, granted, like the next bout that person had, that dude got the shit kicked out of him, but, you know, such is life. There was also like a wrestler, I think it was a high school wrestler, had transitioned from girl to boy, but he was not allowed to compete against other men because it was the state of Texas. He still had to compete against women, and people were like, oh my God, we've got a man competing against women. It's like, well, yeah, but it's a trans man that wanted to compete against other men, but the state of Texas said, no, you're going to keep competing with women. And when, I can't remember the person's name, I'm drawing a complete blank. Well, anyway, when the wrestler won the state championship, he was getting booed. I was like, y'all fucking did this. Y'all told him he can't compete against other men, so now he's competing against women. He was trying to get away from all that, you know? I mean, it's... Excuse me. This is why I say it's such a complex topic. It's not so cut and dry always. But there has been, like, some people that are, like, trans women that haven't, like, that are still, like, in their phase. So they don't have, like, they still have, like, a lot of the physiology of, like, a male. And they, like, in track and field, and they just knock the dust off the rest of the women. And I can see where the perception of that could be completely unfair. But situations like that, I think it's just got to be taken, like, one at a time. Like, it's like, you know, it's on a case-by-case basis because, again, this is such a really difficult and complex issue really to have one on. But, again, I keep saying, I can talk about this all day. I don't have to worry about this. But I've had people say, well, if you have daughters, you might see this differently. And honestly, I have to take that into consideration as well. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Yeah, it's complex because it's an unprecedented situation and people haven't really legally prepared for it. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like, you don't want him competing with boys, but if he's taking hormones to actively change his body from female to male, that's going to give him an automatic advantage just by default, taking hormones. So it's one of those things where people aren't really thinking. It's like, you know, he's going to go, he's actually a female, so he's going to go hang out with the females. Well, he's taking drugs. Hello. Like, he's taking these fucking drugs. He's not normally female anymore. There's things going on in his body that make him physically incapable of equally competing with females anymore. And I think that people have to realize and understand, like, there are transgender people, they are a part of our society, and you can't like say, no, you're gonna go do this instead without taking into account, okay, this person's making a lifestyle choice to transition. There's going to be drugs involved, and if they're an athlete and those drugs are making them capable of being the number one female competitor, even though they're like trying to transition to being a man, you have to be, aware of the fact that you can't keep forcing a circle through a square hole. You have to realize and understand, like, okay, let this person compete with the men if that's where they want to be. 9 times out of 10, they won't destroy the athletic space. They probably won't win much, but at least they'll be where they want to be. They'll be able to properly identify the way they want to. They'll be able to compete as best they can with the guys there. And that's it. But, I think a lot of people, you have on the left, you have people who just don't want to acknowledge the physiological differences between gender. And then you have people on the right who don't want to see any nuance in any situation where, there's actually room for a transgender athlete to compete, especially when it comes to female to male. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, like, on the left, we have so many people who just don't want to, they bring up stuff like, oh, well, what about whites and blacks and stuff like that? And, it's just so obvious that the physical differences between the genders are just too big. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if there are enough trans people for a trans league, but that would be the ideal scenario. That way people can properly, because when there's drugs involved, it's like, when there's hormones involved and stuff like that, automatically a competition comes into question.
Yeah.
Because who's taking more drugs than who? You know what I'm saying? Like, who's on more testosterone than this person? And so, the trans athletic space in and of itself, whether it's, non-separate or whatever the case might be, it's going to require society to really like hone in and figure out what the rules are going to be.
Yeah. That's why it's like, if there's one thing that kind of gets under my skin though, is like when, gentlemen like you and myself, we talk about this issue, right? If we don't say things exactly the way like some people on the left want us to, we're automatically labeled as like hateful people, or, oh my God, you're automatically transphobic. I'm like, no, that's just my point of view on this. It's not because like maybe I'm not completely informed on this topic, and I'll accept that. But this is just like my 30,000 foot view essentially. And when people bring up the topic of like, oh, it's like, yeah, it kind of are, honestly. And I can see like why that might be necessary again. But again, this is like, it's not such an easy topic to discuss, simply because like, again, I don't have to worry about a situation like this. I don't have to worry about competing whatsoever. But there are people out there that do have to. And like, you'll always find that person that says, oh, yes, I'm very accepting about this, until they experience it themselves. Then I wonder, will their tune suddenly change? Let's say, for example, this person considers themselves like an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. But then something like this changes that situation. And then they start becoming outspoken critics about that. And then they get attacked by the very community that they're such strong defenders on. I mean, I feel like in a situation like this, it's okay for us to have healthy dialogue about this and discuss this issue. And people just need to take a little bit of a chill pill. Let's hear the arguments out. And then if I'm uneducated about this, hey, let me know where I'm wrong. I mean, that's just kind of where I'm sitting at. I mean, do you feel the same way in a way?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest weakness on the left right now is, we don't really. It's kind of like we're we do a lot of witch hunts and witch trials and on the left, where it's like, if you aren't purely 100% dedicated to this narrative, we will destroy you. And what's really supposed to separate us from the right is, I'm not saying the right's incapable of nuance, but like what's really supposed to separate us is the ability to put our emotions or feelings aside for a bit and try to look at the facts as best we can. And, I want transgender athletes to have a space to compete. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those people who's like, trying to box them out of having a damn life or being able to compete in sports.
Sure.
Because I think it's it's unrealistic to expect someone to just tell someone like, oh well, you've transitioned now, so time to wrap that whole athletic stuff up, call it a day. So there has to be an acknowledgement of the fact that women finally have their athletic spaces where they can compete, and they need to be able to compete with other people who are natural athletes, as in they're not taking performance enhancing drugs, and people who don't have hormonal advantages that can't be undone. And it's completely damaging to women's spaces, because the thing about on the left is we have to account for so many different communities. We have to, try to make sure that we as a society are taking care of everyone as it should be. And not everything's going to be perfect. You know what I mean? Especially when you're talking about an issue as complex as transgender athletes, especially when the conversation involves performance enhancing, not necessarily performance enhancing drugs, but drugs that are used for the sake of transitioning that can affect one's performance. So the left is just, when it comes to this issue, oftentimes we just lose all nuance, all understanding, and we just throw out the accusations of hating trans people. And this is part of the reason why it's so hard for us to convince other people of what we believe, because we don't respond with an argument, we respond with an accusation. And then when someone's like, hey, like, that's not really an argument, could you explain yourself? I don't have to educate you. And then it's like, well, you just lost someone there who could have been convinced of something. Yep. So we definitely, that's one of our biggest weaknesses for sure.
Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes some of us on the left have a tendency to play the white knight or something like that. If somebody is let's say for example, somebody on the left hears a person that might be trans or might be Hispanic or something like that, and they find out that they're voting Republican or voting for Trump or something like that. It's like, why are you voting for that person? No, listen, I'm here to protect you. It's like, no, I didn't ask for your fucking protection, okay? I mean, I feel like the left has a tendency to just automatically assume and says, well, wait a second, why are you doing this? Because I feel like everybody has their reasons to vote for whoever they want to or feel a certain way. I mean, you've got some trans influencers out there, like Blair White's a great example. She's voting for Trump. She's very conservative, and people are like, why? Why would you vote conservative? It's because it's not a single issue vote kind of deal. There are some things that she agrees with that I disagree with her on, but that's something that the left has got to reel in. It's listen, not everybody thinks the same way we do. There are a lot of things that I disagree with the left on. I mean, I'm not going to go through that list, but it's just I always say the left is sometimes its own worst enemy. Sometimes they just try so hard to be so accepting that they look more, unwelcoming. They tend to alienate other people for the sake of being too accepting. It's just pump the brakes there, Chief. I mean, come on. You don't need to just do it that hard. I mean, you don't need to accept everything. Sometimes you just need to okay, why do I believe in this? Don't just go along with it just because you belong to that ideology. Find out why you believe in what you do. That's just my point of view on that.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I find myself, looking at certain people who vote for Trump, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. But it's, you got to realize they could be working a job, that they could be working in an industry that was that received some sort of benefit from the Trump administration. That's all it takes for someone who might belong to a certain community that, it's you voting for Trump. That's all it takes sometimes, is for someone's pockets to be filled with a little bit more money, or for their job to be saved, for someone to say, look, that's my guy. And then you have the people who are, ideological supporters, and it's really, you support Trump? But, we definitely have we have a finger pointing problem for sure, where it's just I can't believe you would ever think that or choose that or support that. And it's, I think we're changing a little bit more now, because I think there's a lot more center left people that are pushing a little bit against the far left now. But yeah, that is definitely one of the weirder things that takes place for sure.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I just think in an issue like this, again, I feel like it's okay to have conversations like this, but I feel like if you're being malicious, then obviously your bias is already showing. It's not because you care about the sports. It's not because you care about like women's issues. It's because you just. I feel like there are people out there that are just straight up malicious. Like this is no, this person's a freak of nature. This person, there's something wrong with it. Like that's when I have a problem with it. But like I feel like if you have a legitimate criticism and you can argue it correctly, then yeah, I can see your point of view. Even if I disagree with it, I mean, as long as you're able to articulate that point of view, I feel like that's more important. But there are people out there, they're bad faith. They're just going to say it because it gets them the most clicks, which, you know, that's what our society is. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, we are addicted to controversy. We are addicted to stuff like this. Like, why else do you think people talk about this more than they talk about the fact that, oh, I don't know, there are, you know, children that are homeless on the street. But we don't care about that. But we definitely care about, like, an issue that most other people wouldn't even give 2 seconds of airtime to, honestly. Just like, I don't know. I think our priorities are a little fucked up. Honestly, like we tend to focus on really, really unimportant issues. I mean, reality television, it's everywhere and people watch it all the time because it's so controversial. Just.
Yeah, we have our moments for sure as a society where we freak out about like, you know, things that, you know, things where we're like, you know, should we freak out about it? But then, you know, sometimes it's like because life is so good in the West that our problems are a little bit smaller. So sometimes like, you know, what needs to be focused on can look petty in the grander scheme of things, but sometimes, you know, that's just the problem at hand at the time. But yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. You ready to move on to the next topic, or was there anything else you want to weigh in on this one?
We can move on.
All right. Excuse me. All right. So my next topic, Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana signed into law requiring the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every classroom in public schools and colleges. Now, this has created a great deal of controversy across the nation. People are now suggesting that the new law is unconstitutional and breaks the separation of church and state. Now, while the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution by name, Thomas Jefferson did indicate that it is in fact implied. Now, those who are in favor of this new law will use the argument, well, this is to protect people's religious rights, or the reason why we have so many school shootings is because we took God out of the schools. Now, all of this is completely ludicrous in my opinion. For starters, school shootings happen for a number of reasons, and it's not because God is not involved in school. To say so to me is just really offensive, and it's just a cop out of an answer, because I'd seen t-shirts that says, God, why did you allow this school shooting to happen? And then the answer is, oh, because I'm not allowed in your schools anymore. I find that repulsive, and I find that disgusting and offensive. Now, if these people think it's okay to have the 10 Commandments posted in all public schools, does this mean now we can have scriptures from the Quran that could be posted too? Should imams be allowed to come on the loudspeaker in places like Dearborn, Michigan, where not everybody at Tensile School happens to be Muslim, and the imam can then start singing from the Quran? How about Scientology? Should children be allowed to see scripture of the galactic warlord Xenu? I mean, you can bet your bottom dollar that every evangelical in the country would lose their shit. I mean, we already have batshit crazy parents that are sending death threats to librarians over books. This would truly take a turn for the worse. Now, I understand when the topic of religion is brought up in schools, I don't think children should necessarily be forced to take part in any religious activities. Now, if they want to participate, that's fine, as long as it does not interfere with their studies, right? That is their decision. Now, if history lessons involve talking about world religions, okay, fine. Feel free to talk about all world religions. However, then it kind of gets into murky waters where people like start bringing their own biases to dictate the curriculum, essentially. Now, you're going to have like a non-religious person who says that all religion is evil, and they start telling religious people, hey, you're evil, you've caused more harm around the entire world. Or you'll have like an evangelical Christian says that all atheists cannot be moral because they don't believe in anything, essentially. I just feel like this would just start I feel like, especially in the state of Louisiana and all across the country, people are going to start, oh, well, you know what? Since they're doing it in Louisiana, why don't we do it here kind of deal? And everyone is just going to start fighting over one another. And then I feel like, more death threats are going to happen. Like more teachers are going to get threatened. I mean, what are your thoughts about this, Rashaad?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a side effect of MAGA. I think Trump's ascension in politics has caused a little bit too much craziness. I mean, this is in light of the Arizona abortion law. This is in light of the IVF, our children stuff. That's the embryos or children stuff that went on in, I believe,
Alabama.
Was it Tennessee? Or was it Alabama? Yeah, I mean, this is this is the fallout of that. They've, people who have no respect for actual American values that are either implied or written into the Constitution are completely just disregarding everything in this country and trying to prioritize their own beliefs. And this Christian nationalism stuff is exactly what's happening. That's what's taking place, is the prioritization of, of their beliefs over everyone else's. Because like you said, if you ask them, hey, do you want the Prophet Muhammad, his teachings being taught in school, I guarantee you they'll say no.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, none of this is being done for any good reason other than this is what I believe, therefore it should be done.
Yeah. I mean, last I checked, now the number is kind of like up in the air, but Louisiana, from where I checked, is ranked number 42 as far as education across the country out of 50 states. So, a little dicey if you ask me, but like, I just think that just goes into crazy territory. Now, again, when people say the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution, this is correct. However, Thomas Jefferson did say that it is implied to protect the state from the church and the church from the state. Basically, they're just there to kind of protect each other, essentially, where the church doesn't dictate U.S. policy. Not one religion is going to be in charge as the overarching ruling class, essentially. I mean, this is the purpose, and this is why we have the Constitution in the first place. You start putting this in the schools, it basically says this religion is more important than yours. And, I even think that, forcing children to stand up and recite the pledge is it's a stretch. I mean, I still did it when I grew up in school. That's just because I was told to, right? Not because, I really was told I had any choice, right? But, I think that,
right.
When it comes down to, things like this, of this nature, the reason why I have a problem with, the Ten Commandments, because, not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody does believe these things. And, of course, then you're going to hear people say, oh, well, what about these pride flags? First off, there's no legislation, there's no law saying you have to have pride flags. It's like a preference of teachers. And, it's people that are just, choosing to do the whataboutism game, and for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is just like it's kind of like, oh, we're bringing God back in school, so now we got you. Now this is law, essentially. It's just like, this is probably just a virtue signal, honestly. I mean, there's no mistake. I mean, the South is known for being the Bible Belt and whatnot, and Louisiana's no different.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with you're dealing with people that just genuinely do believe. I'm not gonna say that America was not a Christian country, or we've been a nation of Christian people, but we understood the importance of making sure that people had religious freedom. Because let's just get rid of all the whole Islam stuff.
Sure.
Even in Christianity, what if you have a Catholic teacher? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Now the Catholic teacher is taking advantage of the presence of the Ten Commandments in the class to teach their Catholic doctrines. And you have a whole host of kids who are probably white Protestant. And even black people are majority Protestant. So you end up with, intra-religion clashes where you didn't even have to worry about Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism. Here you have Christianity itself feuding with itself. And this nation was built by Protestants. It was built by people who, were trying to, find religious freedom. And the idea that somehow or another the Ten Commandments being inside of every classroom in Louisiana is a good thing. I mean, people are only thinking about their own beliefs and their own ideology. And there's just so many ways this could go wrong, even if we don't take into account Islam and other religions. And it's just, I mean, the whataboutism of oh, pride stuff in schools. Look, I don't think that should be in there either. I think kids should be there to learn neutral facts about history. And that's it. I don't think they should be swayed either way. I don't think they should be having religion pushed on them, or they should be having, political ideologies pushed on them. But, that's what we're dealing with, an increasingly insane political space. And I think that, honestly, the only good that'll come from this is that this is going to hurt Trump. Like I guess that's the only good, like this kind of stuff happening is, it doesn't look good for him. You know, the people in his wing of the Republican Party engaging in this kind of behavior makes his presidency seem like a time capsule back to the 60s, 50s. You know, it's crazy. I mean, for people like us, this is prime content, but for the average person, this is definitely, you know, crisis mode.
Oh, sure. What was it? I remember somebody made a post saying, "Thank God we've got the 10 Commandments back in schools." I was like, yeah, thank God, because, you know, the next school shooter that goes into a school in Louisiana, he's going to see the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill, and he's like, oh, geez, I'm totally fucked up. I'm totally wrong. Here, let me put this gun down and just kind of walk away from all this. It's not going to happen. I mean, I'm just being a realist about this. I mean, then people say, oh, what about the gun-free zones?
Right.
I was like, well, what about the gun-free zones? I mean, no one's saying that gun-free zones stop, you know, school shooters. I mean, school resource officers don't stop school shooters either. I mean, hell, look at Uvalde. But, like, I just look at this as, like...
Right.
I just think this is going to create more problems. And what I found most interesting is that of all the people they interviewed about this, they interviewed Congresswoman Lauren Boebert about this. And she's like, oh, this is so fantastic, because there we can teach our children not to steal. Her own son has like 20 counts of theft. And she like brags about how good of a mother she is, and yet her own son is a criminal himself. I mean, you know, I guess it just runs in the family kind of deal. But, you know, you've got her to talk about, oh, I'm a Christian values. She's the last person that should be talking to anybody about Christian values whatsoever. And this woman's absolutely horrendous. Then you got Trump, like, basically saying, I love the 10 Commandments. Like, dude, you committed more adultery than anybody else. Like, I don't know, what commandment has he not broken, for crying out loud? I mean, seriously.
I mean, yeah, I think that guy, yeah, I think he's probably broken maybe all of them in one lifetime. I mean, bro, like, yeah, the fact that Lauren Boebert even opened her mouth about that is crazy. It's like, man, we've caught too much stuff. Like, we know too much stuff. Just chill. Like, we're on to you. You know, this is the time for you would think that they'd smarten up and be like, all right, guys, a little bit too crazy. It's election time. Let's look sane. You know, let's look sane this year and then go back to insanity once we win. No, they're fully embracing the foolishness. And yeah, like, for Lauren Boebert to even open her mouth about this is just ridiculous. But this is what it's about. It's about hypocrisy. It's about, you know, preaching to people when you yourself are wilding out more than there's probably plenty of, you know, sex positive liberals out there who are promiscuous, who aren't doing the kind of stuff that Lauren Boebert did in public.
Yeah. Who
don't have kids doing the kind of stuff that, you know, Lauren Boebert's kids are doing. It's just like, why not just let people live their lives in peace? You have your 10 Commandments. And let that be that. But, you know, they're held hostage by this radical base. They can't speak reason into them anymore. They're being held hostage. And, you know, if they were smart, they distance themselves. But they can't. They just... It's sad to watch, man. It really, really is.
Absolutely. And it's just... I'm glad you brought up the fact that, you know, there are people out there that aren't even religious, but yet they are monogamous. Never cheated on their spouse. They teach their kids to treat people the way you want to be treated, kind of deal. Because, like, I was raised religious. I would say I'm more spiritual. I mean, I believe God, and I do believe Jesus probably did exist, even though we really can't prove his existence, kind of deal. But I kind of leave it at that. I'm okay with being people religious, but, like, if your religion basically dictates you to be a dick to other people, then no, I'm sorry. I have a problem with that. Because I've known people that are Christian, Protestant, Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, Scientologist, whatever, that are good people that just believe in treating people the way you want to be treated and actually use their religion for all the right reasons. I fully support that.
Passionate religion, and yet you just don't. You're just not seeing any of that.
Oh no,
it's crazy.
No, I mean, because like, what was it? When my wife and I lived in Georgia, we actually went and saw Jimmy Carter. Former President Jimmy Carter gave a Sunday school, because he used to do it all the time at Maranatha Baptist Church down in Plains, Georgia, where he lives. And he did it. He did it like twice a month, but now he's just too old and he's on hospice care. But you know, he challenged the entire congregation to go out and do one good deed to somebody else. It doesn't matter what it's like. Give somebody gas money, give them a ride to work, do one good deed. He's like, because he firmly believes, like, if all of us with all the negativity in the world, if we put that much effort into negativity and doing a good thing for other people, you're doing your part in making the world a better place. I love that. That was fantastic. I loved every second of it. But I just feel like there are people out there that they only cherry pick parts of the Bible, but they're not honest about that. They say they believe in every part of the Bible. It's like, oh, really? Well, let's talk about this chapter right here, And it's just like I said, there's some screwed up stuff in the Bible. But when it comes to the Ten Commandments, right? I mean, MAGA is especially known for this. Thou shalt not create a graven image, whatnot. They've got golden statues of Donald Trump at their conventions. I mean, what does that tell you, for crying out loud? I mean, you're creating a graven image of Donald Trump, and he's loving it. Like, the guy is all about pride. He's all about vanity. Like, he loves this attention he gets. But, he's a Christian because he's read the Bible. He says 2 Corinthians. When it's not 2 Corinthians, it's 2 Corinthians. I mean,
2 Corinthians. Yeah, I mean, that's not a guy who... They are idolizing him. He is an idol. They have created an idol out of him, and it's funny to watch people who don't like him being completely capable of not idolizing him, and then the Christians who are supposed to be of God basically turning him into this infallible individual who can do no wrong. And I know what it looks like when Republicans can criticize someone because we saw Obama's presidency. Oh, yeah. So it's like, I know that Trump has far surpassed the classlessness threshold for presidents. And yet they still cling to him. You know what I mean? They cling to him. They won't let him go. I watched Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about the meeting he had with Republicans in Washington, and she was talking about him as if he was like her father or some kind of like figure that was just like larger than life. Like, yeah, Trump came in and then he saw me and said, "Hey, Mark." It's like, y'all are adults. Y'all are all grown. He's not even an elected official. Technically, he ain't shit. Like, y'all are the ones who are in office. Why is he walking in? And it's just, it is something to behold, man. It is something. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, because he has that much sway over the Republican Party that the second that you go against him, you're pretty much going to lose his endorsement, and that kiss your campaign goodbye. Because during 2022, when it was Dr. Oz and God, what's his name, McCormick or something like that, McCormick came out outright and said, because he initially had Trump's endorsement, but then when he came outright and said the election was not stolen, Trump called him right after the interview aired and says, "You need to take that back. If you don't take that back, you're going to lose my endorsement." He's like, "I'm not going to take that back." Trump took away his endorsement, endorsed Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz became the candidate. And Chuck Schumer apparently even confronted that guy McCormick and said, "Listen, I think you could have beaten John Fetterman because he had more solid policies than John Fetterman did." And I actually believe that too, because I saw that guy debate and he was much more solid than Dr. Oz. He actually had more firm positions, and plus he was actually a citizen of that area. I mean, he actually lived in Pennsylvania, unlike Dr. Oz, right? But it's complete insanity, how everybody idolizes. Nothing bothers me more than when people say, "Oh, I believe that Donald Trump was sent to us by God." God does not determine our elections, okay? The people that go to the voting booths determine who wins elections. But when people treat him like some messiah, I didn't even like it when people considered Obama a messiah. He's not. He's just an ordinary man, I mean, even he had his faults. Even he accepted that he had faults. He doesn't consider himself this messiah of some sort. I mean, he did his time. He went into office. He left. I mean, he'll come and show face every once in a while, but Obama's chilling. That guy's living large. He's having a great time.
Yeah, it's treat Trump in that way, and then simultaneously shove the 10 Commandments in our face and be like, "All right, here's what you're supposed to do." It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Be in alignment with God is it's crazy, man. It's absolutely insane.
I mean, everybody needs to remember what happened when he held the Bible upside down, for crying out loud. And it's like, oh yes, this shows how much of a Christian. It's like, listen, It would have been much more important if he would have dragged the bishop out and says, hey, listen, let's show a sign of unity. He didn't even take the time to contact the bishop for crying out loud. He just did it for his own personal reasons. That's it. But, if anybody believes that this guy's ever actually read the Bible, they are kidding themselves. But it's just, I could go on all day about like how much of a fraud this guy is, but it's just, when he came out and says, oh, I love the idea of the 10 Commandments in here, that's just to get more religious people on his side, essentially. I mean, it's not that he needs more of them. Like, when you got people out there, like these hard right people that tend to be evangelical, it's just, they will abandon those principles that they claim to hold so dear just for the sake, because like, well, have you looked into Project 2025 at all?
There's a lot of stuff. I haven't read it yet because it's too much stuff to read. I have to really take some time out to really dedicate my time to that. It's a lot of shit.
It really is. It's pretty frightening stuff. Like, it basically says, like, Christianity is the only religion, essentially, and it's like, it's the law of the land, which I have a huge problem with. I mean, I don't care what religion it is. Like, everybody should be free to practice what religion they want to without any fear. As long as you're not, like, putting people's lives in danger. As long as you're not using, like, for example, if you're a religious person and you're committing scams, then no, you're not protected by the First Amendment. But, like, the ability to peacefully assemble, whatnot, that should be always protected. Project 2025 is basically going to yeet all that out the window for the sake of some, like, Christian nationalist majority, which, hello, Handmaid's Tale, V for Vendetta, 1984, that just screams authoritarianism, which I can't go with that. So,
yeah, I don't think they'll ever. Evil always is defeated. That's just the thing. It just happens every time throughout history. So I don't fear them, even if they win the election. If they try to enact this kind of stuff, they will be defeated. I don't know how, but they will not win. They definitely will not succeed because other people who are Christian will say no, like absolutely not, like. No, like you're not going to make my life worse by like monitoring every little thing I do and then like matching it up to your like Christianity, no, absolutely not. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting next 4 to 5 years, regardless of who wins.
Yeah, I 100% agree on. So you want to go ahead and cover your last topic for the evening?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden and Trump are going to be debating, and I see a lot of people saying like they need to take a drug test and stuff. Like, let me make it abundantly clear: both of them need to be on drugs because I don't know. I'm starting to see Trump kind of showing signs of losing it. Biden's been showing signs of not. Whatever they've got over there, in the CIA, FBI laboratories, give it to both of them, because I need full capacity, capability, full performance in this debate. I need to know exactly what both of these guys represent, in its totality. But I do think Joe Biden's probably going to lose, and I think he should find an excuse, like my dog ate my shoes or some shit. Like, I don't think he's going to win this one.
The election?
No, the debate.
Oh, debate. Okay. Yeah.
If I said election, I apologize. I meant debate.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. So, like, I really do think that the debates nowadays are a joke, anyways. It's because they should stop allowing like the mainstream media outlets to like the hosts to like ask questions, because I feel like the last person that I felt that asked the best questions was Bob Schieffer, and that was in 2016. I felt like he was one of the last great moderators. But if you want to get a great moderator in there, I would get Mehdi Hassan out there, because that guy is not scared of holding anybody to account. That guy is vicious. And the thing is, like, he does not play around. Like, he will hold people to account. If they don't answer his questions, he's like, no, that's not what I asked. This is what I asked, essentially. But I already know that they wouldn't have him be a moderator. We can just pretty much nix that idea. But, yeah, Donald Trump, it's got to be a shit show. Like, I know for a fact it's going to be a shit show. Donald Trump's never going to answer the question directly. He's going to deviate off course. Joe Biden has a lot of gaffes. I'm not going to lie. That guy is a gaff prone. But I acknowledge this. The MAGA crowd will not. I mean, they think it's great that he was talking about what a great guy Hannibal Lecter was. And they say, oh, he was just kidding. Okay, well, what was he talking about with the batteries and the sharks? What the fuck was he going with that? I mean, that was completely incoherent. I didn't even know what the hell he was talking about. It's just like, what are you talking about? It's like, I've never heard a question like... Nobody's heard a question like that before. Nobody asks questions like that. Holy shit. It's just like, what?
Yeah, they're in a different reality. Trump could literally... There's nothing he could do wrong, I don't think. Like, they live in a different world with their own rules, their own regulations. You know, Trump is not necessarily on the same level of like decay as Biden, but you're starting to see more rambles, you know, and it could also be the fact that Trump just lies so much that it's kind of hard to like, what did I say back then so I can line it all up and make it all make sense now? That's really hard to do. So it could also be just Trump trying to, you know, have the lies together and string them all up and make it all make sense. But Trump is starting to show signs of incoherent babble and ramble. It used to just be like sharp diversions, but now it's like, you know, just any and everything just coming out of his mouth. But it is sad that these are our two options. And then when I look at what else we got, I think RFK, and I'm just like, oh god, this too. It's like, you know, one guy who's clearly past his prime, which is Biden. Trump, who has no respect for anything in this nation's, like the systems, the institutions, nothing. And then you have RFK, who's just in a completely different world with his own beliefs that are not even tethered to reality. And it's just like, we need as a nation to have a talk about this, because this is not acceptable.
It's amazing because, like, yes, Biden's old. Like, I have no problem admitting that. You know, it's just how things are. Trump is not exactly this young, sprightly individual. The dude's 4 years younger than Biden. And, you know, I like the fact that Biden kind of took a clap at him and saying, he's like, yeah, happy birthday, Don. You know, but, like, RFK legitimately has a brain worm in his head right now. I mean, he does not sound healthy whatsoever. Like, when you hear him talk, he literally sounds like he's on the verge, he's on his deathbed, essentially. But, like, yeah, I definitely do think that we need to have a talk about, like, who should be, like, next up for the Democratic Party. Like, you know, I'm still going to vote for Biden. There's no doubt about that, because, like, I can answer to, like, the legislative decisions that he's made, the policy decisions I feel like have been great. But when it comes down to the debate, though, what do you think are some of the biggest things that, you know, Biden should be on the lookout for? Do you think Trump's going to just kind of hit him home on, like, try to score one for the team? Like, what are let's say 3 issues?
He's definitely going to blame Ukraine on Biden. He's going to blame the Israel-Palestine conflict on Biden, and he's going to blame the increase in crime from illegal immigrants on Joe Biden, which Biden did repeal some of the policies that Trump put in place. And Trump is definitely going to take advantage of that and angle it in a way of like, hey, this wouldn't have happened if it weren't for you. That would have happened if it weren't for you. Biden's going to have to prepare for that. He's going to have to prepare for being blamed for Ukraine. He's going to have to, you know, there's a lot of Biden with this one in particular. Biden has counters. The question is, can his team like find them and properly communicate them to him? And can he be sharp enough to be able to catch Trump and be able to pull him in that direction? And then, of course, he's obviously going to blame like Israel-Palestine on Biden 100%. And Biden's going to have to be prepared for that. Trump's basically going to just like, whatever has gone wrong, regardless of whether Biden was there or not, like the sun could disappear tomorrow. And because Biden was in office, somehow, you know, so Biden needs to be ready for those 3.
What do you think Biden needs to do in order to get Trump off his heels? I mean, that's not going to be very hard to do because Trump's not going to answer the questions anyway.
Yeah, Biden's going to have to definitely like make Trump acknowledge, like, so you're not going to answer that. You're not going to address that. You're not going to, he has to make it obvious to where like Trump supporters cannot walk away from the debate. Because the thing is, like, debate, it's not like MMA or boxing where someone goes down or there's like a unanimous decision by judges. You know, it's really up to the people to decide who won. So Biden has to kind of like force Trump supporters to just ignore the debate or act like it didn't happen. So if Trump decides to push in one direction, Biden has to make it clear, like, oh, so you want to run away. And I don't know if Biden can do that because although he's not all, people act like he's not even alive. Biden's very much there. The question is he quick enough to be able to grab Trump when Trump tries to run and bring him back? It's very possible that Biden might let Trump slip away at key moments. And, Biden might need help from Obama because Obama was a very, very effective debater. So he might need to call up his guy and figure that one out.
If he needs any help from anybody, he needs to get in contact with Chris Christie, because Chris Christie is a very effective debater. And, he may not have done as well, but the thing is, though, Chris Christie actually tried to help prepare Trump in the 2020 campaign, but he's like, no, stay away from that. Don't talk about that. But Trump didn't listen to him. So Chris Christie knows how to argue something. He's very good about that. But I don't know if he's ever going to reach out to him because, Chris Christie already says that Biden's a disastrous president, but he already said he's not voting for Trump. So, but if I was to pick issues that I think Trump's really going to hit home on, he's going to go for the issues that tug on the heartstrings of Americans the most. He's going to bring up the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He's going to bring up the 13 service members that were killed there. He's definitely going to drive that one home, saying, oh, if I was in office, this never would have happened, which we can't prove that. We will never know. For all we know, Trump could have done a much worse job, and he would have blamed everybody else for it. He's definitely going to tackle him on immigration. Immigration is one of the issues that he's going to bring up Laken Riley. He's going to bring everybody. He's going to bring up the issues that is going to tug on the heartstrings the most. And then I think the one that I don't think he's really going to go up, talk about Israel, Palestine. I don't think he's going to talk about Ukraine or anything like that. I think the next issue he's going to talk about is the economy. He's going to talk about how, I had the world's greatest economy and nobody did better than me on the economy. And Biden has got to say, no, that's not true. All right. As a matter of fact, my economy, you inherited a great economy that we left you, but then you screwed it up. You let the pandemic get too far out of control. I mean, that's the thing that Biden has to cling on to. And let alone the fact that Biden has got to hammer home. Leave the cases out of this. Don't talk about the cases because the Trumpers are already ignoring that stuff. There's people out there that already believe the Stormy Daniels case was the weakest case. Never should have gone to trial. I'm glad it went, and I'm glad that he got convicted, but it's just they need to focus on why he is a terrible president. And the thing he's got to hit home is the fact he's already said he will not accept the results of this election. He didn't accept the results of the last election. He's undermined the political process. He basically does not trust the system, and he doesn't want you to trust the system. He's got to hit that home. And just all these Trump people are out there saying, oh, there was plenty of proof of election fraud. There's none. There was election fraud is statistically irrelevant. It's such a small percentage. It's completely insignificant, but they've got no way of proving that. I mean, hell, you got Mike Lindell, my favorite pillow. The dude just, we've got all the evidence. It's just, we're waiting to bring it to court. Bullshit. You ain't got no fucking evidence, you asshole. But it's.
Yeah, it's the thing about Biden is there's so much, he has to chase Trump. And he has to almost it's almost like playing a soccer goalie. You have to fucking be at the right position at the right time to make sure that ball doesn't go in. And Trump's going to be kicking, from so many different angles, and Biden has to be ready for, scores of misinformation. If Biden's going to do this debate, he needs to fucking leave being president to Kamala Harris or some shit for 2 weeks and just get ready, because Trump is going to push so much misinformation. And the shitty thing about misinformation is that, anyone can spread it and effectively use it. But the truth, it's really hard to convince people of that because it requires all this evidence and stuff like that. People don't want to, if they already believe something that's false, they want you to produce a shit ton of stuff to convince them that, what they believe in is wrong. So Biden is going to have his work cut out for him so much, man. And I wish he hadn't accepted it, but, I understand that he wants to deal as much damage to Trump as humanly possible before November. But, the MAGA crowd is just kind of doing it on their own, the 10 Commandments stuff. They're doing a good job of, embarrassing themselves. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, again, I do think that this whole debate is just gonna be a shit show. I probably won't be able to watch it because I have to go to work the next day, so and it's gonna be late as shit when they air it. But I'm probably gonna listen to it on my way into work. But it's just, I don't think what determines like outcomes of elections usually, but they definitely leave a mark. Because if I was to like bring up one example of like where a debate, like where a guy just got hammered, but it didn't do anything for them. Oh yeah, it was Elizabeth Warren actually, where she was talking about like how our job is to basically make sure that a certain sexist individual doesn't get elected into the White House. She wasn't talking about Trump. She was talking about Michael Bloomberg, and she completely shut his ass down. Like, but she didn't win the nomination. But like, that's what I'm saying. Debates don't always determine elections. But Biden, like you said, he's got to be sharp enough to get on Trump's case and kind of like hold him to standard. But Trump rambles. He does the Gish Gallop where, you'll ask him a question about Ukraine. He won't talk about Ukraine. He's going to talk about his economy. He's going to talk about the oil prices. He's going to talk about everything else. He's going to Gish Gallop, and it's not. And the moderators have got to do a better job about that. I mean, there's got to be people that are actually just like, no, Mr. President or Mr. Trump, can you please answer the question that I asked you? But Biden also has to do the same exact thing. I think Biden would be a little bit more, what's the word? Coherent regarding that. He just might be slower to answer the question, but Trump is just going to Gish Gallop, and just dump all these answers, but not answer the question. And people are just going to give him a standing ovation regardless. I mean, oh wait, no, there's not going to be an audience there. That's what I forgot.
Yeah. It's tactical bullshit. It's just, he just spews tactical bullshit, but with no audience, it's going to be really, the lack of an audience will make his pettiness look worse. Because he's gonna say and do some really like petty, and without people being like, yeah, you'll be forced to kind of, oh damn, this guy's an asshole. So it's one of those things where his populist tactics of, let me insult my opponent to make it seem like I'm a normal person, fellow normal people. Without a crowd, it's gonna, it's not gonna look as classy. It's not gonna look as cool. It's gonna look really ugly. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think either of them are coming out of this one unscathed. I think Biden's lack of cognitive sharpness will hurt him, and Trump just being the individual he is, it'll make him look bad too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. It'll be interesting, but, it's going to get a lot of views. It's going to get a lot of clicks. People are going to be talking about it. I mean, I'm sure like some of our friends in this, in the Twitter sphere or the X sphere or the Twitch sphere, YouTube sphere, everyone's going to be talking about it. Like, that's going to be like the most popular topic, and then it's just going to kind of disappear, just then people won't talk about it. I'm sure everyone's going to like want to pitch in and give their points of view about it. I'll probably do like a follow-up show myself and just say, well, that was interesting. Maybe I'll just like, do a follow-up show to that. So, was there anything that you kind of want to weigh in as far as the debate?
No, I think that's pretty much, I think we covered everything.
Oh, fantastic. So, anyway, before we wrap up, you want to go ahead and just kind of give yourself a shout out and just let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, I mean, my name is Rashad Crenshaw, and you can find me on YouTube. Just type in Rashad Crenshaw, and I should hopefully come up. So, yeah.
I've put your link in the description, so that way people can just click on your show as well. I'm pretty sure we'll see you on more WIC panels. I know WIC likes to bring reliable guests back. So, but Rashad, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. I think it was a great conversation. I feel like we covered a lot of ground right here. And anyway, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope everybody else can tune in next week for my next guest on Current Events on Tap. So, you want to give your last shout out before we go?
Yeah, I mean, just thanks for having me on. That's pretty much all I can say is, thanks for collaborating with me and bringing me onto your show and, having this chat. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, fantastic. Well, everybody, I hope you all have a great weekend, and I hope you all see y'all next week. Take care now.
Yeah.